Dr. Ernest Holmes wrote in The Science of Mind, page 29, "To learn how to think is to learn how to live, for our thoughts go into a medium which is infinite in its ability to do and to be. By thinking, we can bring into our experience whatsoever we desire. If we think correctly and become a living embodiment of our thoughts. This is not done by holding thoughts, but by knowing the truth." Let's know the truth now as we together speak the affirmation on the screen and on the cover of your program. With God as my source, I have within me the strength and courage to walk the pathway of plenty, the journey of joy, and the course of conscious creation.
Beginning and just take a look at the core principle that all of this beautiful teaching is founded on. And this is the essence of it, is that each and every one of us are individualized expressions of ultimate reality. We are some part of this great, vast reality that is known by many names, depending on where you are in the world. God, Allah, the Great Spirit, Brahma, you name it. There are a lot of different names for this one presence. And it doesn't matter, does it? Does it really matter what we call this one life? What matters is that we comprehend that this presence is for us. And it is not only all around us, it is something that is within us. That one great light, intelligence, wisdom, love, the all that is who we are. So ultimately, whether we like it or not, we are all interconnected because we are of that same source. Now this core principle is so important because it is from this basis that we then begin to apply universal principles with this knowing, with this awareness, with this awakening to who we are in truth. And so this month, what I'm wanting to offer you is some great teachings, and I love the way Charlie approaches this idea of prosperity, is that prosperity is something that happens very naturally when we are in this awareness of our oneness and connection with all life, when we are aware of our divine birth, we are divine beings, when we are aware that our thoughts create. Ernest Holmes and many great mystics of all time have reminded us of this idea of our thoughts create. So it's important to be mindful that our thoughts at all times are constructive. So we're going to be delving into that, but also looking at some very deeply spiritual principles and practices that are also very practical for our daily lives. And in particular, I want to draw from two different authors, their teachings. One, many of you have heard of. It's Wallace Wattles. Back in 1910, he wrote this book that is The Science of Getting Rich. And it sounds on the surface to not be as deep as it really is. It's very deep. And all of these are about working in close contact with the divine. The other book is more present moment. This is a contemporary of ours. Her name is May McCarthy, and she wrote a book called The Path to Wealth, or The Path of Wealth. And we'll be getting into more about her life in this time and place. But what I noticed when I was Googling her online is that she has been to all of the various Science of Mind centers all over the country. already, and offering her workshops and that kind of thing. So we're just kind of getting tuned into someone who's put it into really and practice in her own life for quite a few years and has reaped the benefits of working in close contact with the divine. But first, I think it really helps if we take a look at where we are now. So self-assessment is actually a really important thing, as long as we don't do the guilt and the shame thing, because we're not into guilt and shame in this spiritual teaching. We're into what was so beautifully said at my retreat last weekend by somebody by the name of Sharon Salzberg, she teaches Buddhist meditation. She said, "You can always begin again." It's a reminder that in each moment is fresh. You let go. If you know that you kind of got involved in some negative thinking or something, you let it go and begin fresh. You can always begin again fresh. Such a great awareness. So if you're willing to do this now, this self-assessment, and just within a place of interest and a willingness to see where we are so we know where we want to go. Is everybody ready to do that with me? Yes. All right. Okay. So Dan, let's put the first slide up. So here's the first question. So is the pathway of your life one of struggle, or is it an ongoing experience of God's plentiful universe? So it's all the way from one, the most struggle, all the way up to the most ease and grace and plentiful living. So whatever comes to your mind right now where you are on that scale, just notice it. You don't have to say it or don't have to tell anybody, but just notice where it is on that continuum. Okay, Dan, next one. Is your journey through life unsatisfying or filled with joy and meaning as you live from Spirit's purpose? Again, take a look at where you are on the scale. Remember, no shame, no blame, but just a simple interest in knowing that this is going to be a catalyst for you for forward movement. So where are you? And just take note of that. And then there's one more. Do you feel like you are on a course to nowhere? That's all the way at the bottom, to working in harmony with divine law to consciously create every step of the way. So again, where are you on that scale? So just take note of that. So here is the whole concept behind this. Because of who we are, and I went into that earlier, the core principle, the core truth of who we are, we all have the capacity to live at the level of 5. And every single one of them. We all have that within us. You understand that because of divine birth. So in truth, we may have been conditioned to think that we're limited in some way, but nobody in this room is. No one anywhere is. And so this entire month is about helping you to learn at the level of 5 in each and every one. So I invite you to make sure you come back every week because there's going to be another item for you. And there is one additional book for sale in the bookstore of the book by May McCarthy if you're interested after today in reading up on your own. Okay? So let's just continue with that concept then. And so here's the thing that many of us have realized, and many of the mystics over time have realized. And I just recently, Dan and I recently saw the life of Yogananda, which is a beautiful documentary that you can get on Netflix. And what he did is he provided a roadmap or a pathway to enlightenment and spiritual liberation. That's what we offer here. And when we follow the roadmap, when we keep moving forward, we find that our lives really do truly transform. I'm also studying with right now with Ken Wilber. It's an online program called the Superhuman Operating System. And again, the whole idea is that we are the real self, the true self of who we are, is already whole, perfect, and complete. It's really about us awakening to that and living from that place. Rather than stumbling around in the dark trying to figure it out on our own, there are some really beautiful, clear pathways that are outlined to guide us there. So here are the questions I'd like you to contemplate. Could you get used to being on an ongoing experience of God's plentiful universe? Could you live that way? Okay, let me say that again. Could you get used to an ongoing experience of living in God's plentiful universe? Yes. All right. Could you get used to a life filled with joy and meaning? Yes. Could you get used to consciously creating every step of the way? Yes. All right. You notice that last one actually gives you some responsibility, right? Consciously creating. We have to do our part. So again, wherever you are in the continuum, there's something for you here this month. So I'd like to begin with a story. I'd like to begin with actually a modern parable, and I found that it's not a true story, but it still has a great lesson in it. So there once was a merchant by the name of Taylor, and he had a kiosk. And he sold at his kiosk items that were of high quality, so he charged a little bit more for them, and people were so grateful to have the quality, they paid it. And so he was very successful. And then one day he was inspired. He said, well, maybe I could open a store. So he, with encouragement of all of his customers and friends, he opened his first store. And of course, because of the extra overhead, it meant the prices had to be higher. And then he noticed something. People were not coming. They were not, and the ones who were coming were not buying. And he really got panicky, really felt a lot of anxiety. And he wondered, oh my gosh, did I make a wrong choice? Did I make a mistake, a really dreadful mistake, by leaving my kiosk and taking that leap and going to the store? And so how many of you are in that place in your life or have been there where you've taken the extra leap, you thought you heard the guidance, you took the extra leap, and it looked like maybe things were not working out the way you expected? You know, how many have been in this? Yeah, I think there are a lot of us that have been there. Okay, so here's the deal. Let's look at what he did next. So what Taylor did next is he listened deeply inside of himself, and he realized that it was time to take on a partner. So he chose his partner very carefully. And here was how the plan unfolded, is that he met with his partner every morning at 6 a.m., went over all of his visions and dreams with the partner, expressed gratitude in advance that it was already demonstrated, and then set his intention to live in alignment with that throughout the day. And so he and his partner worked together all day long. And then in the evening, they reviewed what had happened and thought about all the things, he thought about all the things that he was grateful for. And listed those, and then thought about maybe people that he wanted to forgive. And so this was his practice day after day, and soon business began to boom. And soon it was so incredibly successful that he was moved. He was feeling so grateful to his partner that he was moved to change the name of his company to Lord and Taylor. I remember I said this is a modern day parable. But you know what? Those are the kind of stories that the ancients told. They took, like regular stories, exaggerated them, but for the purpose of teaching a spiritual principle, right? So that's why we don't get worried about whether the facts are all right. It's really about the principle. Everybody's going, yes, we get it, we get it. So, with that in mind, I want to share with you a little bit about May McCarthy. I've been reading her book. And this is a woman who lives that principle and who has lived it. She started off a little kind of bumpy in the beginning. What I understand is that her mother gave her a copy of Florence Scovel Shinn's book, The Game of Life. How many of you have read that book? Oh, that's a great book. Oh, Candace has, good. It's a great little book. We might even have one in the bookstore, I'm not sure. But this was a woman who taught metaphysical principle in a very practical way back in like the 1920s or something. And very, very deep relationship with the divine that she had. So that was the book that her mother gave her, a metaphysical book before she took off for college. And she read it and she studied it and she started applying it. And she opened her first business while she was still in college. Started a business that was successful. But she said, what happened? I think she started 5 or so different businesses after that, all enormously successful, where she was the CEO and so on. And she started off being kind of irregular at her morning spiritual practice. And she would notice these ups and downs, and she'd go, when things got really in crisis, she would go back to her practice. So how many of us are like that? That we go back to the practice when we're in crisis instead of keeping it consistent day after day after day. Well, that's what she learned. She learned that it's important to keep it consistent day after day after day. I can tell you myself, I know the importance of that because I've every once in a while I get off track and it's like I can feel the difference. I need to get back on track again. What I love about her method is that it takes 30 minutes in the morning and a few minutes at night before you go to bed. And it's a commitment to partner with the divine. It's a commitment to partner with the divine. I'd like to read to you what she said, a little bit of an excerpt from her book. She said, I've been blessed to experience wonderful business opportunities and successes, but I didn't do all the work and planning alone. The all-knowing power of the universe that I call the CSO helped me. CSO, by the way, is Chief Spiritual Officer. She met with her Chief Spiritual Officer every morning. This power guided me to do what I needed to do to receive what I wanted. All I had to do was trust the direction I received and work with the CSO as my partner. As my trust in the universal power matured and I grew in my partnership with the CSO, my success and my prosperity increased immensely. Because I felt increased peace and happiness, this is what Charlie Curtis is teaching, right? It's mindfulness meditation, really. Because I felt increased peace and happiness, the work didn't seem as burdensome as at times, and at times, it even felt like I actually was doing less. So that's what happens when we do our spiritual practice. Anybody notice that when you do your meditation, you do your prayer work, that your day goes more smoothly, and it feels like you're doing less than when you skip it. So anyway, so what if then everybody in this room, if you haven't already, made a solid commitment to work with your divine presence, the divine presence, whatever you call it. You can call it the CSO, the Chief Spiritual Officer. You can call it simply Spirit. It doesn't matter. But this divine presence is wanting to partner with you and work through you and as you in order to live the life of your dreams. So that's the what if. The what if every single one in this room started that right now. Can you imagine what would happen? It's important, though, to know what our job is and what the job of the CSO is. So here's what she outlined. It's really just 4 basic role descriptions for us. It's very simple. Decide what you want. You know, we have a beautiful process called visioning here that helps us go deep below the surface mind and contact the deepest intents of our heart. So the main thing is to make a list. Decide what you want and make a list. Number 2, consciously stay in alignment with that. We stay in alignment with it by not allowing all of the mind chatter to take us in directions where we don't want to go. You know, I'm talking about, and you can tell when you're going in a direction that's not serving you, it feels uncomfortable. You can feel the anxiety, etc. So peace, we want to cultivate a consciousness of peace, a consciousness of love, a consciousness of joy. That's the vibrational match to what we want. Okay, and then the next is be grateful in advance. So once you decide what you want, and we're going to be doing more of this next week, you write a letter to the divine, to your CSO, and say, thank you, or I'm so happy and grateful now that, and you state everything in the present tense, as if it's already happening. Be grateful in advance. And the last one is follow the guidance that you get every step of the way. So remember, if you're in your practice of meditation, of meeting with your CSO, and going through your vision, and you're practicing staying in alignment throughout the day, then the guidance comes through loud and clear. It comes through much more clearly when we're in a state of receptivity or peace. So that's our job. So what is the CSO's job? Everything else. Everything else. The pathway there, the opportunities that show up, the resources that show up, the people that present themselves to support our vision, and the guidance. All of that is provided by the divine when we simply let go and think that we have to do all that. We have to find all the opportunities, and we have to find ways to get all the, the thing is we listen to what our role is. But it's really much more simple than a lot of people make it. And so all the, our final song that's all about struggle and strife, the I release and I let go, the struggle and strife takes place when we try to do God's job. When we do our job and we relax into our day, it goes much more smoothly. It's ease and grace. Ease and grace. So I want to share with you, I mentioned to you that I wanted to share some things from Wallace Wattles in his book, The Science of Getting Rich. And here's how he says the same thing that Ernest Holmes just said that Marcy shared with us, but I love the way he says it, so I want to share this with you. He said, there is a thinking stuff from which all things are made. You can think of it as energy, whatever you think of it as, but there's a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which, in its original state, permeates, penetrates, and fills the inner spaces of the universe. A thought in this substance produces the thing that is imagined by the thought. We can form things in our thought, and by impressing our thought on this formless substance, can cause the thing we think about to be created. That's what our Science of Mind symbol is all about, right? Thought, original thought is up here, or spirit, descends into the middle section, which is the creative medium that he was talking about, or Ernest Holmes was talking about, that produces, in the bottom section, the experience that we have. So there's a beautiful universal law of cause and effect that is available to us when we realize it, and then when we use it constructively and consciously. That's the conscious creation part that we're talking about, that's our responsibility. So here's what he goes on to say, and I think this is really powerful. That's why I'm reading it. He said, to think what you want, things like health and abundance, is to think the truth. The truth is we are health and we are abundance. When it doesn't show up, it's because we've believed something else. But our nature is health and abundance. So he said, to think what you want is to think the truth, regardless of appearances. To think according to appearances is easy, right? That's what a lot of us do. We look and we say, oh, that's missing, or that's gone, that's missing, or that's lacking, or, that's what the mind will tend to do, is look at appearances and then go along with it. But he said to think according to appearances is easy. To think truth, regardless of appearances, requires an expenditure of more power than any other work we are called upon to perform. When we exercise that muscle of returning our mind over and over again to truth, despite what we see or experience with our senses, when we continue to practice that over and over again, we are cultivating a very strong spiritual muscle. It's spiritual power for good. So he goes on to say, there is no labor from which most people shrink as they do from that of sustained and constructive thought. But we are not shrinkers, are we? We do not shrink from this. We are ready to take it on. So he said to think health when surrounded by the appearance of disease, or to think riches when in the midst of the appearance of poverty, requires power. And he who acquires this power must become a mastermind. He can create what he wants. Feel that. Those of us who've been in this teaching have been in it for a long time, have heard these principles. It's nothing new. What I'm inviting you to do is go deeper with it and to be more conscious in your daily thinking, your moment-to-moment thinking of what is going through your mind, and is it constructive? Because if you are reinforcing an appearance of something you do not want by focusing on that, you are misusing your spiritual power. And it's not about feeling guilty or shameful. It's about noticing and beginning again. Noticing, oh, my mind's gone off there, bring it back. Oh, it's gone off there, bring it back. So when we make the effort to think truth in the face of appearance, something really awesome happens. The so-called CSO, Spirit, Chief Spiritual Officer, has the space to work in us, through us, and as us to bring that into form. But here is something else that happens in the process, and I actually sent something about this to all the people who are in the 90-day tithing program. It's something called chemicalization. So what happens when we begin pouring in these new affirmations and truth statements into our consciousness on a regular basis, everything in our subconscious that does not align with that does not serve us, in other words, comes up to the surface. It's when the new bumps into the old. It's like a chemical reaction, and it starts coming up. This is where a lot of truth students lose their courage and drop out. And so I'm letting you know about this in advance so that you can strengthen yourself and also know what's happening. So we begin to pour in the affirmations, focusing on truth, and this other stuff comes bubbling up. Think of it as a time of release. So you just say, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. As it comes up, just say goodbye to it. Let it go. That's what it means by I release and I let go. Let it go. Let it go. I mean, I'm getting God bumps because I've been practicing this really consciously. When something comes up and I feel like an uncomfortable feeling, let it go. Let it go, and then bring myself back to truth. That's a really easy way to remember it. It's not our truth. If it helps you to say that's not my truth, that's fine. But I like the simplicity of let it go. Goodbye, let it go. It's on its way up and out, and unless we grasp onto it and entertain it and get all wrapped up in it, we'll pull it back in. But we just want to breathe, and the breath work really works. Breath, breathe, and let it go. It's amazing how quickly it goes when we do that. It's very powerful. Yeah.
Tell them about the bike crash, because you used
Oh yes, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Okay, so Dan and I like to bike a lot, and we decided to bike in this area, this path that we'd never been on before, and it turned out it was really narrow in places and bumpy and had big holes in it and sharp corners and things like that. And so Dan went around the corner, and then I was following along with him, and I could feel myself starting to fall that way, and I quickly pulled myself over the other way, and I fell, and my finger, was really hurting and swollen and stuff like that, and I started to go into, oh, poor me, that kind of mentality, and I stopped myself. I caught myself. I breathed, and I let it go, let it go, let it go. I got up on my bike and kept riding. Looked a little bit later, and it's like, oh, it's gone. And I was thinking, oh, my foot hurt. I mean, there were a bunch of little things. I was like, oh, it's not there anymore. I let it go. I stopped. I thought, realized where my mind was going, did not want to create that, and I just simply let it go. How about that? Yay!
the more important part.
What?
She got up, she had fire in her eyes that her husband had taken her down the street. And after letting it go, I could just see the transformation. I mean, she came up and she was like this, and then she really did let it go. She smiled and had
Yeah, I know. I got ready to do the blame thing. But see, that's being aware of the thoughts. That those are just thoughts. They don't have to govern our lives. So that's the key. Yeah, really. Okay, so the map to being a superhuman, the pathway. It's provided for you. We've given you some things to get started with. The first thing is to consciously partner with the divine, to have a daily practice, and do these 4 things, and let the CSO, let God do the rest. Take that burden of thinking you have to do all those other things off your shoulders. And so that's my request for this week, is that you do those 4 things, and partnering with the divine, and letting go of letting the CSO do the rest. Next week, I'm going to offer you a very specific plan to work in harmony with your CSO. It's outlined actually in May's book. It's the one that she used. And so I'd like to just take a moment and just end with prayer as we turn within, realizing that in truth, all there is one life, one presence, one power, one source, that life, that present source is all good. It is all God, all life. It is my life. It is the life of everybody in this room. It is the life of all beings everywhere. And that life is for us. It is for us. There is no opposition in this universe in truth. And so I know that as we each align ourselves with this truth, this higher truth, that all there is health, all there is wealth, all there is abundance, all there is peace, all there is joy, all there is this one life and all of its magnificence, that as we continue to practice returning to this truth over and over and over and over again throughout the day, And as we let go and let the divine take care of the rest, our lives flourish in ways that we could not even imagine. I just celebrate this moment as a time to realize what our part is, to decide what we want, to listen to those heart callings, to go over them daily, giving thanks for them as already complete. And also that awareness that each and every moment we are guided and directed into right action by the divine. And so I know that we all have the capacity to hear that guidance, and we have the courage and the strength to follow it. So my heart is just wide open as I embrace and I celebrate this beautiful shift in consciousness, the manifestation of all of our good unfolding in divine perfect ways and absolutely under grace. And I, in this moment, plant this word into the universal soil of creative medium of the divine and watch the arising of the fruits of this truth in my life and in the life of everyone here. So I just celebrate this with great joy, and I invite all of us to accept this good with a vibrant yes, and so it is. Amen.